Well, hi, everyone. I am so glad to be back with you in our Moving Beyond Facebook Lives in preparation for our challenge next week. You know the drill. Let us know that you're here. Leanne and Coach Leanne and I are here to talk about being nice. How many of you would raise your hand and say, I have been too nice sometimes and it has cost me? I have been too nice sometimes and it has cost me. Yeah, me too. So let us know you're here. Would love to see your hand. Hi, Kim. Glad to see you're here. Let's see some others who are here in our Facebook Live. This is the first time I think we've done it in the evening. So hi, Emily. Thank you so much for letting us know you're here. There's nothing weirder than just talking by yourself to the camera. And so I always like to know that people are watching and people are listening. Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. Chris, thank you for being here. So we're talking about being too nice. And I'm probably one of the older ones maybe in the group. And I grew up with this nursery rhyme called Sugar and Spice and Everything Nice. That's what little girls are made out of. And boys are made out of snails and tails or whatever it's called. And puppy, what was it called? Snails and tails and something. But anyway, puppy dog tails, but doesn't rhyme. Hi, everyone. So we are talking about the high price of being too nice. And I think as women, especially women of faith, Christian women, we can confuse one of the fruit of the Spirit, kindness, with niceness, and loving with nice. So I'm going to give you a series of 3 questions, and I want you to put it in the feed and answer them. So when have you been too nice and it cost you? When have you been too nice and it cost you? Like it hurt you? Because we want you to know that there is a high price of being too nice. And God isn't calling you to be nice. He is calling you to be kind. And so we're going to talk about the difference. But let's just first get it out there. When have you been too nice? What happened? And it cost you. It cost you your health. It cost you money. It cost you your reputation. It cost you your safety. When have you been too nice and it cost you? Share that so people can begin to see that sometimes nice isn't the next right choice. Sometimes kind or firm, or sometimes just firm without being mean, is the next right choice. So I'm going to look and see who's made some comments during my courtship. Another older one, yeah. And during my courtship, so Lynette, you were too nice during your courtship and it cost you. I remember working with a woman who was dating someone and she really didn't like him, but she didn't want to hurt his feelings. And it cost her because he date raped her and she would have never wanted to be in that situation. She would have never gone out with him if she had just trusted her own sense of things and didn't worry about hurting his feelings. Now, I'm not saying don't care about anybody's feelings, but what I'm saying is sometimes you're too nice in deference to someone else's feelings or someone else's desires, and it costs you because your gut is telling you, no, I don't want this. I don't want to do this. This isn't good for me. And yet you're afraid to say no. Yeah, so Rachel said, I chose to stay with my husband after he broke his neck to help him, even though he wasn't being faithful and loyal to me. 13 years after much abuse, I finally left. So much destroyed in the process. Yeah, sometimes we think that that's what God calls us to. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. What's the difference between being a willing servant to someone who might need us and being kind about that, and when we're enabling or when it's not our responsibility and it's okay to say, no, we can't do that. Yeah, letting an abuser into my life when forced to forgive, but my reputation is what others think. Character is what God knows of you. Yeah. So some of you are really, Kathy said, being too nice to my son and daughter-in-law, and they took advantage of me. Yeah. And so sometimes we can enable selfishness by being too nice. I noticed red flags when dating my husband, but I was too nice and thought he would change. And now I'm in a marriage prison. I just want you to be aware that this is my public Facebook page. So as you share your stories, just be careful that you're saying something that you're comfortable with being on Facebook, if someone should happen to stumble on this page and look at your comments. But yeah, I have been too nice at times too. I have lent money to people who didn't pay me back. I have said yes when I wanted to say no. And so there's times when it really costs you to be too nice. And sometimes that cost is something that you're willing to do because it's not just nice, it's loving and kind, and God's calling you to do it. And other times you're just too nice because you don't know what else to do. You don't know how to say no. You don't know how to have a boundary. You don't know how to tolerate someone else's disapproval if you say no. A couple of sessions ago, we talked about Proverbs 6. And this is a great example of being too nice. In Proverbs chapter 6, it says, hey, if you were too nice and you co-signed on a loan for someone who can't pay that loan themselves, hold it, stop right there, go back to them and say, I have made a terrible mistake. I shouldn't have said yes. I need to say no. Why does God tell us to do that? You would think that God just wants us to be nice all the time. And yet God is saying, if someone isn't responsible for their own debts and own ability to pay their debts back, why are you taking responsibility for them? That's being too nice, and you're actually harming yourself, and you may be harming them. So where have you been too nice? And it's hurt other people, not just hurt you, but where have you been too nice? And it's actually hurt someone else. Put in the feed if you have a story of that. Yeah. So people have taken advantage. It cost me dearly. It's cost me money just buying and buying to make up because he wasn't used to be giving nice things. But now I'm losing my sanity. Yeah. Yeah, I made all the meals. I did all the yard work. We are just givers by nature. That's not a bad thing, ladies. I don't want you to turn into some sort of mean girl. I don't want that. I just want you to develop the internal muscle to know it's okay to say no without feeling guilty, without getting manipulated into changing your mind, and without feeling selfish, which is often what keeps us being so nice and wishy-washy, huh? Lan, when have you been too nice and it's cost you or it's hurt someone else?
Oh my goodness. So I am a recovering nice girl. And I say that with a little bit of trepidation because being nice cost me taking care of myself, and I stopped being kind to me. So I realized that I was hurting myself when I was being nice to others. And, without giving like a super big example, I will tell you that my niceness hurt somebody else because it showed me, or it allowed me to be untrustworthy because I wasn't being fully honest. And, that humbles me to say that, but I really learned that my niceness kind of was a lie. It wasn't allowing me to be authentic with somebody else. And then when I overed, it made other people feel like they needed to over back, and then nobody was genuine. So not only did I stop myself from being real, my niceness prevented somebody else from being real as well. And everybody got afraid of doing things right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, here's my story. Early in my counseling career, I'll just give you a little secret, guys. Not all counselors are very healthy. And so in my unhealthiness as a counselor, because of course a counselor wants to save the world and fix everybody, right? I like Elaine said, I overfunctioned. And in my mind, I didn't understand all this yet. I wasn't mature enough to understand that it's not my job to be the hero of someone else's story, right? It's not my job to be the hero of your story. I'm here to be your guide. I'm here to help you, but I can't make your decisions. I can't do your work. Only you can do that. But as a counselor, I worked harder than some of my clients worked, those who were not willing to do the work. And I overfunctioned. And I think I hurt them because I enabled them to stay in victim mindset. Like, I need a hero to rescue me. Poor me, I'm the victim and I can't do anything and I need help and you have to fix me and you have to help me. And instead of helping them to be empowered to help themselves, they grew dependent on me to help them, right? And that kept them in a one down position. Thankfully, God woke me up really fast because I was exhausted. I was cranky. And you know what I felt like doing to some of my clients? I felt like pulling them up by the neck and going, stop it. And that's not good either. Thankfully, I was healthy enough to recognize my own unhealthiness in those moments.
Mhm.
And I got great supervision and some accountability and some help so that I stopped doing that, because it wasn't just hurting me and making me feel resentful and exhausted towards some of my clients, but it was hurting them, and it was keeping them in a childlike posture, dependent on me to save them, dependent on me to give them the right answer, dependent on me to fix them. And that wasn't helping them at all, right? And so sometimes when we are so nice, we don't know how to say, I'm not sure what to do. I'll pray for you, but I'm sure you'll figure it out, and not come in there with all the answers or all the solutions or all the resources. Here's money to fix this, or here's the answer to do this, or I'll come over and save you from your cluttery mess in your house, or whatever it is. And they have to start taking ownership of their own life, whether it's your husband, whether it's your child or your adult child. I remember my children routinely forgetting their lunch. They just didn't think, they weren't planning. And this got to be irritating to me. Like, I'd have to run over because I'd feel bad as a mom, like, oh, they're going to be hungry and I'm a bad mom if I'm not willing to bring their lunch. And finally I said to them, hey, it's your responsibility to make sure you have your lunch in your lunch bag. And if you forget, I'm not coming to school anymore because I have my own work to do and you're interrupting my day. So you need to learn to be responsible. And guess what? They forgot their lunch. And I had to be strong enough to say, wow, I am so sorry you forgot your lunch, but I'm not coming to school. Now, it's tempting for me to feel like the bad mom, just like you might feel like the bad mom. It's tempting for my children to label me as the bad mom, or the teacher to think I'm the bad mom, right? So when you have clear boundaries, or you're trying to teach your kids to take responsibility for themselves, or your husband to take responsibility for himself, or your girlfriend to take responsibility for herself, it is so hard because we fear their disapproval. We fear their judgment of us, right? And the fear of man is a snare. So we've talked really quickly about how being too nice can hurt you. We've talked a little bit about how it can hurt other people. How can being too nice hurt God? Any thoughts about that? Put it in the feed if you know that how being too nice can hurt the Lord. It can hurt the Lord's work in your life or in their life. How can you interfere in God's work by you being too nice? Any thoughts? Yeah, Karina says, you've just described me. I am the one who says I will do it all the time. Ask yourself why. Why am I doing that all the time? I remember working with a woman who was I wish she was my neighbor. She was the nicest neighbor. She'd babysit all the neighborhood kids. They could all come to her house for the pool. She fed them all. She'd keep them, all day at her house. And the moms in the neighborhood loved her because she was so nice. And once she began to get some health problems and she needed someone to watch her kids and she needed someone to help her. And there wasn't one mom in the neighborhood who was willing to give up time to help her. And it was a huge wake-up call, just like you said, Leanne. She had no real friends. They weren't her girlfriends. They were using her as the neighborhood babysitter. And when she got sick and she needed someone to step up for her, she realized, these women don't care about me. They're just using me because I'm too nice. And that hurt her, and it hurt her ability to have authentic relationships with other people who were mutual and reciprocal in that relationship. Yeah, Jen said, I interfered with natural consequences, and God uses natural consequences to teach someone a lesson. So that's what the co-signing thing in Proverbs 6 is all about. If someone can't afford a loan, the consequences are, hey, you don't get a new car, or you don't get to buy a house. And when mom or dad steps in and says, oh, I'll cover your loan for you, then they learn that they can be irresponsible and they can just depend on mom and dad to bail them out of those things. And maybe God's trying to say, hey, you need to learn to manage your money better. You need to learn to stop spending so much money. You need to learn to start saving for a house if you want one. You need to learn to get your credit rating better. But we don't allow that lesson to happen because we're being too nice. And so you're hindering God's work in their life because you're trying to be the hero of their story. Yeah, it hurts a lot. I'm much better at saying no. What about if you're so busy pleasing other people? You're so busy bending into what they want you to do because you're being nice. Do you think that you might miss God's purpose for your life? Like when God called me to write a book, the first book, it took a year out of my life. Weekends, other kinds of other time off, I just had to sit in my room and write and write and write and write. And I had to say no a lot to people. I can't go here. I can't do this. I can't help you here. I got to write this book. If I had been so busy making everybody else happy, do you think I would have had time to write a book? I wouldn't have. And would that have hindered God's purpose in my life? Yeah. Because you can only say no or yes when you say no to other things. So I want you to put in the chat, by being too nice to everybody else around you, what are you saying no to? Like Leanne said, I was saying no to myself. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't taking care of my health. I wasn't taking care of my own spiritual life because I was busy taking care of everybody else, right? And maybe by not doing that, you miss what God has called you to do. Yeah, I could also interfere what God wants to do in the other person's life. Yeah, Heather says you feel so busy pleasing that the noise that drowns out the voice of God in your own life. Yeah, that's been true for me. Mm-hmm. Jen says the high price of being too nice or people pleasing is fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Nope, shame on you and only you. You took advantage of my giving nature and what you thought were unlimited second chances, and even worse, try to make me feel bad about it. But I won't feel bad about it, and I will not change who I am. But I will change where you fit into my life. So what a shame for you. I'm a good enough person to forgive you, but not to forget and trust you again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, by being too nice, I am saying no to rest. I'm saying no to Sabbath. Being who I truly am because I became angry by feeling taken advantage of. So this feeling taken advantage of and feeling resentful, do you know inside when you feel that? Again, just FYI, ladies, women have been taught to feel guilty and bad about themselves when they feel those feelings. And yet those feelings are really important warning signs that maybe you're doing too much, right? Or you're stretched too thin, or you're not getting enough rest, or you're not taking good enough care of yourself to give in the way that you want to. You know, they tell you to put your own oxygen mask on first, not so that you just suck up all the oxygen in the room, but that you can help others, right? But when you're depriving yourself of oxygen, of your own oxygen, and then you feel resentful that you're giving everybody else your oxygen, whatever you have, that's a warning sign. Not that you're selfish or you should feel guilty, but that you're not prioritizing taking care of you in order to serve in the way that God calls you to serve, with a good spirit and not a resentful heart. So resentment isn't a sign that you're bad. Resentment is a sign that you're being too nice and giving too much. And you need to evaluate, what am I doing? Where am I saying yes when I really should be saying no? Was resentment your wake-up call, Leanne? Or was collapse? Where was your wake-up call? Because you said I used to be a very nice person.
Right, it was. I would get resentment and I would feel taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. And then I also noticed that some of the people that were in my life were not as good for me because of welcoming in the nice attitude. It enabled behavior in other people that was out of alignment with my values. And so one thing that I have noticed over the years is if resentment comes into my world, it means that I am not living my values. And I'm not being honest about who I am and authentic. And I think that we can still be generous and kind in the way that we show up and engage with other people without going to the extreme of nice. Mm-hmm. And, you know, nice, it has a currency. There is a cost to us. And so we have an opportunity to count the cost. And where is it that we are going to show up in certain ways with certain people? And so nice can be a default for us. Like you said, Leslie, you said at the beginning, we have heard these messages since childhood. Just be a nice girl. Be nice today. Have a nice day. What does all of that really mean? And I think when we can really define it for ourselves and know what we think and believe around the values and virtues that we want to walk into.
I think of the story of the 10 virgins. This is a really good story to think about. So here's 10 virgins, and Leanne and I just had an opportunity to have a trip to Israel. And so it made that story to me more real. You know, these little oil lamps they had, we had little samples of the oil lamps that they had. They were like little, almost tiny little teacups with a little wick. And you'd have to bring like the oil with you so that you could keep filling these lamps, because that's how you didn't have any electricity, you didn't have flashlights, and batteries in those days. So you had these little oil lamps. And so the 10 virgins were waiting for the bridegroom in the middle of the night. And so they took their oil lamp and they went out. But 5 of them were wise, and they brought that little extra pot of oil that they could keep, filling their oil lamp so that it didn't go out, so that they would be in the dark. And 5 of the girls didn't bring enough oil. And when they ran out, they said to the other 5, give us some of your oil. Give us some of your oil so that we don't run out. And so this story is really powerful in Matthew because Jesus is talking about this. And so what would a nice, typical Christian girl do and feel? She would feel compelled to share her oil, because isn't that what's nice? Isn't that what is expected of a Christian? That I shouldn't be selfish and keep my oil to myself. I should give to someone who doesn't have her oil. And yet they didn't do that. What they said was, go to town and get your own oil. We were responsible for ourselves, and we brought oil for ourselves. Go take responsibility for yourself and get your own oil. And when Jesus talked about this story in the Bible, he didn't say, shame on you, bad girls. You're so mean to those girls. You weren't nice. He didn't say that. He said, good for you. Good for you. They were wise. And this is a powerful story for us as women, because we allow people to ask us for things that they should have been doing on their own. They should have been responsible for. It's that verse in Galatians where it says, bear one another's burdens. And sometimes we need to bear one another's burdens willingly. And each of you carry your own load. Each of us have stewardship responsibility, financial stewardship, physical stewardship, family stewardship, making sure we have enough of our own oil to live our lives well, instead of being a tick to a dog on another person and sucking the life out of someone else and expecting them to give us their resources because we weren't wise enough or careful enough to steward our own, right? And this is where we get sucked in as Christian women and allow someone to manipulate us or feel guilty when we have extra oil and they don't, that we're supposed to take care of them when they haven't been a good steward of taking care of themselves. And Jesus didn't say, girls, you're selfish. He said, you were wise. Let them get their own oil, right? And let them experience the consequences of being in the dark for a while, because therefore they will get their own oil in the future. And I think this is really important, that we learn that discernment, that wisdom of when do I put myself out there in a sacrificial way sometimes to someone who has no ability to get oil, someone who might be, old or an infant or disabled and can't have those resources, and other people who just are foolish with their time or their energy or their money, and then expect you to overcompensate for that because they didn't take care of themselves. And this is what we want to teach you in this Moving Beyond Challenge. So if you haven't signed up yet, it starts really soon. It starts next week. I'll put the banner down where you can see how to sign up. But we have about 1,200 women already signed up for this Moving Beyond Challenge. It's going to be really fun. We are going to go off this Facebook page and we're going to go to a private one if you join the challenge, because we want you to experience the ability to be totally honest with yourself and about what's going on in your life, and not feel like someone's going to read this Facebook feed other than the people who are in this challenge. So it's not like your mother-in-law is going to hop on the Facebook page and see what you wrote. You're going to be able to really write on what you're dealing with. And we're going to talk about 5 topics. And one of them, or I'll just tell you what they are. Monday, we're going to talk about moving beyond overwhelm. How many of you are feeling overwhelmed? Both in just like, I'm moving tomorrow. And I feel a little overwhelmed even being on this Facebook Live. We were in Pennsylvania for a wedding this weekend, and our plane was delayed 12 hours yesterday. So we didn't get home until 2 o'clock in the morning. We were supposed to get home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So all of our time to plan to pack yesterday is gone. And my husband's up packing the moving truck, and I'm driving up tomorrow to get the keys to the house, and he's driving up later with the rest of the truck. And we're moving for the summer to our summer house. And it's a little bit overwhelming to figure all that out. How do you deal with that emotionally as well as logistically? How do you deal with overwhelm? How do you deal with overwhelm when it's emotional overwhelm? When you don't know what to do about your marriage, you don't know what to do about your wayward kids, and you're feeling all these different feelings and you don't know how to manage them. You don't even know how to sort through what you feel. That's what we're going to talk about this Monday on the 20th, our first day of Moving Beyond. It's going to tackle subject of overwhelm, but you won't be able to be there unless you sign up, because we want this to be an exclusive group just for people who sign up. And we are charging you a little bit of money, $17, which isn't much, for 5 days of 1 hour a day or 1 hour more of coaching. I'll be on every single call or every single Facebook Live, and we're going to do an email in the morning when you sign up. Hey, Monday morning, what do I do with overwhelm? Try this, this, this. All right. In your email, couple short steps, and then hop on our Facebook page. We're going to do it Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to be on there, myself and one of my coaches, for an hour. And we're going to talk about, how did you do with that challenge? Did you do the steps? What did you get stuck on? How did you sort through your overwhelm emotionally? And we're going to help you deal with moving beyond overwhelm. Tuesday, we're going to talk about moving beyond negative emotions and bad moods. Now, I had a chance to practice some of this yesterday when the plane was delayed, over and over and over and over again. You better believe that life's circumstances were upsetting for sure. There was no food in the airport. It was like Christmas at the airport. It was so crazy crowded. I have never seen a Tuesday at the airport as crowded as it was yesterday. All the planes were delayed. All of them were late. They were all crazy. There's thousands of people at the airport. And it was very easy to let your bad mood and negative thoughts get the best of you. How did I not do that? I will share with you how I did that on Tuesday. In your email, you'll get some tools, and then we will practice them in our Facebook group together. The whiteboard, the whole thing. I will teach you how to manage those negative emotions that will come up when life doesn't go your way. They do come up. What do you do with them so that you don't not only not be too nice, but not to be too nasty when that happens, right? How do you manage those negative emotions and bad moods? Wednesday, and that Facebook Live will be on noon Eastern time. Wednesday, we're going to talk about how to move beyond your fear of failure. How many of you think that God might be offering you something really juicy in the future? Like maybe you're supposed to write a book, or maybe you're supposed to teach a Bible study, or maybe you're supposed to get a job for the first time and you're scared. You haven't worked for 20 years. You feel like, oh, I don't know what to do. It's too hard. It's too scary. Or maybe you're to leave a destructive relationship. Or maybe you're just to say no to somebody. Even that feels really scary and you're afraid. So how do we move beyond our fear of failure? Same thing. Give you an email in the morning. Do this, do this, do this. Very specific action steps. All right. And then hop on the Facebook page, and we're going to talk about that with our coaches. And that will be 7:30 p.m. Wednesday night, Eastern time. Thursday, we're going to talk about how to move beyond unrealistic expectations. Now, again, yesterday at my airport thing, I had the expectation that the airplanes would be on time. I had the expectation that the airplanes would at least be reasonably on time. I had the expectation that it would be easy to change my flights and all of those kind of things, and none of that happened. How do you deal with expectations that seem quite reasonable but aren't happening? How do you deal with that? You expect your husband to be honest. Of course. You expect your children to listen to you. Of course. There's nothing wrong with that, except for reality fights with what we want, doesn't it, sometimes? And how do we handle that reality? And so we're going to be talking about that on Thursday, and our Facebook Live will be at noon Eastern time. And then Friday, we're going to cover moving beyond people pleasing, which we've been sort of talking about even in this conversation. Why is it? Why is it? It's not just you don't know how to say no. You don't say no. Why? Why don't you say no? Well, because we're afraid. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of disapproval. We're afraid someone's going to be angry with us or disappointed with us or not like us. We're afraid that we aren't enough for them just by being us, so we have to overfunction in order to earn their love or their approval. And so how do we start changing that so we can have authentic, real relationships without having to say yes when we don't want to? How can we develop relationships where people value us not for what we do for them, but just because of who we are? I mean, this is what we want, isn't it? How do we do that? And so we're going to be talking about that Friday. So if you have not signed up for this challenge, it's going to be rich. One person said last year about the challenge, it was the best $17 she ever spent on a week of help. And she had been in a couple of years of therapy. So this is going to be intense. It's going to be very, very practical in real time, helping you move through these 5 struggles that most of us struggle with. And we still will struggle with them. It's not like yesterday I struggled with those things, but I knew what to do. I knew what to do. And I did not have a meltdown or a crazy day, even though lots went wrong, both with the airplane, and I lost a journal that I had been working on for a couple of weeks on certain job things that I needed to get done, and all of that information is gone. And so it happens. Life happens in ways that you don't want, and you're upset. And how do you deal with that is what we're going to talk about throughout this week, so that you are coming through this challenge with a fresh start for the rest of 2022. So if you haven't signed up yet, please join us at leslievernick.com/challenge so you can be part of our Moving Beyond Challenge. It starts Monday. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You will get an email every day, and you will get an opportunity to be on Facebook with us live every day, myself and one of my coaches. And if you can't watch it live, it is recorded on the Facebook page in our special Moving Beyond Challenge Facebook page, which you'll get an invitation to join once you sign up for the challenge. All right. Anything else you want to say, Leanne, about the high price of being too nice?
Well, it kept saying it has currency. It has currency. And so when I think of the high price of being too nice, all the things that you spoke about, in addition, we forget to be nice or kind to ourselves. Other people can take advantage of us. We can attract the wrong people into our life. You spoke about expectations. The other people's expectations of us, as well as our expectations on other people. And this challenge is so powerful. I remember going through this challenge a couple of years, and the tools that you're going to get, the steps, the real, this is meat here that we're offering up in this challenge. There's going to be thought joggers. And when I think of even the opportunity to be coached in a more intimate group, we're going to be sharing dialogue and talking about the steps that it takes in order to overcome some of these things. You know, there was something that I wrote down that is a risk of being too nice. And is it okay if I share that?
Sure.
All right. So I think that for me, a personal story for me is that when I have been too nice, I have allowed other people to define who I am then. They will speak things into my life that perhaps are outside of my big circle because of their view of my niceness. Everybody's going to describe it a little bit differently and define it. And when I give all of that away, I'm allowing that person to determine the kind of person I want to be. So it gives the control away when I'm too nice, because then I have a fear of even coming back and saying, hey, you know what? I gave that some thought and I'm not able to do that.
Right. Right.
And, you know, so then it can harm my reputation because I'm not following through with my word. And sometimes I think it's okay, Leslie, when we're trying to overcome some of these things and this cost of being too nice, to rewind the tape just a little bit and say, you know what, I'm pushing the pause button here for a moment. Can you just give me some time to think about this before I answer you? And sometimes, you know, going through the challenge last year, I remember saying, and this is a really fun tip for those of you watching, if you really want to dive into this challenge in very real ways, you can say, hey, you know what? I have a coach that's challenging me right now on releasing some overwhelm or negative thoughts, and I'm going to be practicing. So if you see some new things or a new way of engaging with you, this is why. And imagine the opportunities with that. It's going to give somebody else an opportunity to see you just a little bit differently as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's a great tip. So Leanne, I'm just going to summarize. She gave you 2 tips that aren't even for next week. They're this week, right now in this free chat, right now, this free conversation. The first tip is when someone asks you to do something from now on, instead of saying, okay, which would be the nice thing to do, say, you know what, give me a chance to give that some thought. I know I have some things coming up and I just want to check my schedule. That's all you have to say to buy time, to work up your courage to say, you know, I looked over my schedule and it just won't work for me. Do not give them a reason. Because if you give them a reason, they will argue with your reason because your reason will never be good enough for them, right? So if you say, well, I can't babysit your kids because I'm, you know, going to lunch. Can't you change your lunch? It'll always be another, can you sacrifice for me? So all you need to say is, I looked at my schedule or I looked at what I have to do and this won't work for me. End of conversation. You don't have to explain yourself. Don't explain yourself, or they will argue with your reason, because it's never going to be good enough for them to not get what they want, especially if you're dealing with someone who's manipulative. The second tip Leanne gave you. So the first is press pause and just say, let me think about it. And the second tip that Leanne gave you is, with those people in your life that aren't going to know the new you when you start saying those kind of things, you can just say, I'm in a challenge this week, and I'm working with a coach who's helping me learn to be a better version of myself. And I realize that sometimes I say yes when I don't mean to, or I want to think about things, or I have to learn to speak up for myself better. And so I'm going to be practicing this week with my friends and with my family. And that's why I said no. And so you blame it on us for now, so that you can practice some new things. And they're not thinking, what happened to you? You turned into a different person. You're not the wife I thought you were. Maybe you're not, but you've always been faking it to try to be the wife he thinks he wants. Right? And instead of trying to be strawberry ice cream when you're really chocolate ice cream, God wants you to be the best version of chocolate ice cream. That's right. And you will attract people who like that, versus trying to be what everybody else wants, and you're never sure of who you really are. So those are some takeaways from today's conversation that we want to help you grab a hold of. And one of the things that I really want to help you be assured of, I'm a Christian, Leanne's a Christian, my whole coaching team come at this from a biblical perspective, because I think sometimes we feel a little suspicious of worldly advice. We don't want to be ungodly. But Jesus said no plenty of times. He didn't get caught up in people pleasing or other people's approval, and he didn't worry about their disapproval. He always did what God wanted him to do. And sometimes in order to say yes to God, he had to say no to people. And this is a really good example in the book of Mark. In I think the first or second chapter of Mark, Jesus is at Peter's house. His mother-in-law is ill. It was right after a long day of ministry. He heals Peter's mother-in-law so that they can rest and eat. She cooks for them. And then it says in the Bible, the whole town appeared at the door because they wanted Jesus to heal their friends. Now, what does Jesus do? So he had a willing heart. I'm going to heal them for a bit. He healed them, however many he healed. Now, he could have just said, everybody be healed, now go home. But he didn't. One at a time. He talked to them. He listened to their story, and he healed them. And then the scriptures are really clear. It says, Jesus went to bed. So at some point he said, I'm done. I'm done. No more tonight. He said, no, I need to take care of me. And then he got up early the next morning and he said, no, I'm going out to pray. I need to take care of me. And during that time of prayer, I'm sure he said to God, what do I do? Everybody's wanting to be healed back there and I didn't finish last night. Or do I go here because I think you're calling me to Jerusalem? I have to say no to one of them. What do I say no to? Here or here? And in that moment, Jesus discerned. God's calling me to go to Jerusalem, because Peter comes out and says, Jesus, where are you? Everybody's still waiting for you. And Jesus says, I'm not coming back to your house. I'm going to Jerusalem to preach. So in order to say yes to Jerusalem, Jesus had to say no to the other people who didn't get healed. Did that make Jesus a bad guy? Did that make him mean? No. But do you think they were disappointed? I'm sure they were. So this is where we need to get really clear in what is God calling me to do and what are other people calling me to do. And am I listening for the fear of man and the approval of man, or am I going to listen to God and what he's calling me to do? Because if you're not listening to God, you're going to miss what God's calling you to do. And you're going to be caught up, and that's where it hurts God and it hurts you, is that you've missed the person you're supposed to be because you're so busy trying to be what everybody else expects you to be. And failing probably, because that's not who you're supposed to be. If you're supposed to be a butterfly and everybody expects you to be a construction worker, you're going to always feel stressed out and miserable, because that's not who you're supposed to be. And yet you're not letting God help you be who you're supposed to be. So we're going to go to some questions now. And there's a question I see in the feed that I want to answer, if I can find it again. Let's see. I think it's this one. How do you combat? Jen wants to know, how do you combat the manipulation? You must not love me if you don't do this for me. Tactic. When it comes from your tween child who has witnessed these tactics used by their father. If you don't do this for me, then you must not truly love me or care for me. It hurts more when it comes from your child, knowing how much negative behavior they have picked up on, and you try to tell them that you do love them. And just because you don't do this or that for them, that doesn't mean you don't. So here's where it's a very strong manipulative tactic, that there's this belief, this underlying belief in their head, that if you love me, you will always do what I want, right? If you love me, you will always do what I want. Just like we have this belief sometimes with God. If you really love me, then you won't let anything bad happen to me, right? And then when something bad happens to you, like your husband cheats on you, or you can't catch your airplane on time and you're getting cranky, God, you must not care about, right? It's very tempting because we have this underlying belief that life should go my way. If someone really cares about me, it should be easy, right? And so here's where, as a mom, you need to say, you know, what you're telling yourself is a lie, that if I really loved you, I should always do and give you what you want. But as a mom, I know that's not true. And I hope as you get older, you'll realize that's not true too. Sometimes a good mom says no. And that's all you have to say. Sometimes to love you is to say no and to let you be disappointed in me. That doesn't mean I don't love you. Now, you say that. You can't control whether they believe that. You can't control whether they receive that. And this is so hard, whether your child is 2 or 22. You can be a good mom and your child can still see you as a bad mom, right? I had an example in one of my books where a mom had 3 girls and they were all about, I don't know, 6 years old. And they were all very different, not 4, 6, and 8, somewhere around there. And she said to each of them, no, you may not have a cookie before dinner. We're having dinner. You cannot have a cookie. One child said, okay. Another child said, Mom, you're so mean. You don't care about us. Another child said nothing but stole the cookie. Was she not a good mom to all 3 kids? You cannot control what your child does with what you say to them. Only they can control that. Even as young as 2, 4, 6, 8, they decide whether they're going to believe you or listen to you or obey you or whether they're not. And that's part of their journey and part of your journey as a mom to help them to understand that. So don't get sucked into the manipulator's tactics and belief that if you love me, you will do whatever I want all the time. It's not true. It's not true. So don't even try to play that game, because if you play that game, you are going to get sucked into always having to say yes in order to communicate love. And love sometimes says no. And sometimes love is a hard no. Okay. Let me see if there's some other questions. Kim, can you put the questions in the feed that we have in the chat so that I can see them easier? That would be helpful.
I've got it here, Leslie.
Oh, you have it. Okay. I don't have it. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah. She just put it in. All right. And she did. It looks like you just answered that one. It says here, here's another question for you. The Bible also talks about how the one who doesn't work doesn't eat, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Bible's really clear that when you are not responsible, not taking responsible steps to grow in your maturity and take care of yourself, the Bible calls it self-stewardship, right? It's not selfish. Just like, ladies, let's just put it in a real plain language. Is it selfish when you wash your dishes at night? Is it selfish that you clean your counters? Is it selfish that you sweep your floors? No, you're trying to be a good steward of the home that God gave you, right? It feels better to live in a clean, ordered home than it does to live in a chaotic mess, right? In the same way, it is not selfish for you to sleep 8 hours a day, for you to eat healthy, for you to take time for yourself to study and pray and be quiet and be still that God is talking to you, for you to read, to nourish your soul and your mind. Those activities are not selfish any more than doing your laundry, paying your bills, or cleaning up your house is selfish. Those are called stewardship things, to create a life of beauty and order internally and externally, right? And so don't let someone make you think or believe that you're taking care of yourself is wrong. And that's why in the Bible it says, hey, if you're not taking care of your own finances, if you're not working to provide for yourself, then you don't get the perks of someone else doing that for you when you're an adult. Part of being an adult is that you steward yourself. And I'm going to say something strong for some of you here, because I know some of you are in destructive marriages and you, like me, so I'm going to take ownership for this. I went from being a financially dependent on my parents to being financially dependent on my husband. Not totally, because I've always worked, but not managing money, not really learning how to manage money. I always worked, took care of that. But some of you have not. You have gone to college or maybe not gone to college, and you sort of became a mom and a wife, and you've never had to be financially responsible for yourself. That's fine for a season, as long as you and your husband say, hey, I'm going to be the mom and the wife and the caretaker of our home and family, homeschool, whatever you're going to do, and he's going to provide the income. But if you neglect this part of your life and you don't know how to work or can't get a job because you're not skilled enough to get one, what happens if your husband wigs out on you and cheats on you and leaves? What happens to you when he falls over dead or gets hit by a car and you have no skills, you have no means of support, right? So this is a naive thing that as females, we have allowed ourselves to do, is just be dependent financially for someone to take care of us. And again, we can do that for a season while we're also taking care of our children, as long as if we had to, we could take care of ourselves. Never put yourself in a situation that you don't know how to take care of yourself, that you don't know how to manage your money, any more than you would put yourself in a situation that you don't know how to drive anymore, or that you don't know how to manage your checkbook, or you don't know how to brush your teeth and take care of your body. These are part of the skills that an adult person does, right? And so when the Bible says, if a person doesn't work, they don't get the perks of eating, it's saying steward your life so that you take care of yourself. And I'm not saying we always have to work or everybody has to work. Some people have the opportunity to provide for themselves in other ways by partnering with someone who brings in the money and you bring in other perks in the relationship. I'm not saying that. I stayed home with my littles for a little while too. But make sure, ladies, even as Christian moms and wives, that you don't lose your license if you were a teacher or you were a nurse. Don't let that go. Keep up with your skills so that if you had to work, if something happened to your marriage or your husband, heaven forbid, but if it happens, I see it happening all the time in my ministry. If it happens, you are not put in a situation where you feel like a child who doesn't know how to take care of yourself, that you can. May not be your first choice, but you can if you have to. And this is, Bible tells us adults need to do this.
So
Any
good.
other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important, that it's okay to take responsibility for yourself. That's being kind to yourself. Jesus, somebody had put in the feed earlier about let's remember Christ here in the middle, and let's become Christ-like and remember Jesus. If we love like Jesus, we love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Not after we love ourselves, but as we. And so it's this, co-walking with Jesus. And if he's calling you to take some responsibility, maybe what Leslie just said is sparking something in your body, mind, and spirit. Maybe there's a new skill you want to learn, or a credential that you need to send in your renewal payment for. Do it. Put that on your to-do list. It's important that you care for yourself, because we don't know.
Just like I would say to men, it's important that you learn how to do the laundry and sew a button and cook for yourself and all those things, so that for a season, we might say, oh, you take those responsibilities and I'll take these responsibilities. And that's fine. I do that in my marriage as well. But if you don't have someone who takes responsibilities, or you have someone who falls over dead, or you have someone who wigs out sinfully, and you have to take over those responsibilities, can you? Are you capable? So I remember in my family, one of my relatives' wives died very suddenly, and he didn't know how to use a computer. He didn't know how to open the checkbook. He didn't know how to pay the bills. He just knew how to go to work and bring his paycheck home. That's all he knew how to do. And he had to grow up fast in that situation of, how do I learn other adult skills that I just depended on someone else to do, that now I have to do? And he did. And he grew, and he's an amazing person through a tragedy in his life. So don't be afraid of those hard things that push us to develop muscles that we probably might not have developed had we not had to go through what we go through. But that's part of our maturity. Just like kids when they're in school, and your first grader saying, but it's so hard to learn my arithmetic. And yeah, it is. But that's teaching you your basics of algebra and all the rest of the stuff. And if you don't get those basics down, you're not going to be able to be what God calls you to be in life. If you're supposed to be a scientist or you're supposed to be a doctor, you got to get this nailed down, right? And so part of our maturity is always learning so that we can be so fully what God calls us to be.
And to speak truthfully to speak truthfully to ourselves and to our kids. When you were given that example, I stunk at algebra, but I had to make it through. And my dad spoke those true words to me. Leanne, you need to do this to graduate. So let's just plow through. And, when you were sharing earlier, Leslie, about speaking to your child about the beliefs that they hold, and they're telling themselves a lie, that is one of the kindest, or you could put nicest things you can do, is be honest with people and speak truth into a life-giving truth into a situation. There's something so powerful in that. And, what would be different if you switched your too nice into being kind and honest and speaking up in truth? So anyway, we have another question, and yeah, I'm going to answer this question for this gal. If you miss a day next week, you can watch the video later. Everything is going to be recorded for you. And the cool thing is an email is going to come to your box with the thought joggers and the tips and the strategies for you. So you can be on a lookout for that as well. All right. Are you ready for another question?
Yeah, let me just answer a couple of questions about the challenge that I see. First of all, it's Monday through Friday next week. You will get an email and you will get an invitation to the Facebook. Let me give you the Facebook times again so that you can put it on your calendar. All right. So Monday, we're going to be on Facebook at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So wherever you are Eastern time, so it's going to be at 1 o'clock my time because I'm on Pacific time, but it's going to be 4 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to be on the Facebook page for at least an hour, not this page. You have to sign up for the challenge because you will get an invitation to the Facebook page for the challenge so that it's more private, so we can talk more honestly about whatever your particular situation is. And you're not fearing that it's a public page and somebody might see what you say. So if you are a part of this challenge, which you have to sign up for, sign up today. It's the leslievernick.com/challenge, and it's $17, and you get access to all the emails as well as all the Facebook Lives. Each Facebook Live will contain me and one of my coaches, like Leanne. We will be there together for a full hour. So Monday, it's at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll be there for a full hour just to talk about overwhelm. We're just going to talk about overwhelm. We're going to share the tips that we shared in the email. We're going to show how to use them. And then you're going to give us feedback like, okay, I tried this, but I got really stuck. And you're going to have the support of one another in the Facebook group. You're all doing the same thing every day. You're working on the same goal. So it's an amazing synergy that happens in the group itself, where you get ideas that someone says, oh, this is what I did, and this really helped. And you're like, oh, I never tried that. I'm going to try that too, right? So you're going to get these amazing connections with other people and accountability as you're moving through this challenge week together. So Monday, it's overwhelm, and we're going to meet together at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Tuesday, we're going to meet together at noon Eastern time on the Facebook page, and it's about negative thoughts and bad moods. How do I move beyond those things? We all have them. I had a bunch of them yesterday, but I didn't let them get the best of me. I was aware of them, but I didn't let them cause me to be irritable or nasty or cranky. I knew what to do with them. So I want to teach you, when you start to feel those feelings, instead of feeling ashamed, like, why am I feeling this? I'm not a bad Christian. I shouldn't be feeling. I did feel them. I did have bad thoughts. What do I do with them? How do you recognize them? How do you move beyond them instead of getting stuck in them? That's Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to talk about how do I move beyond my fear of failure, even saying no. What if I don't do it right? What if someone doesn't listen to those negative thoughts? And each day builds on each other, because then I start to feel overwhelmed. What do I do with all those feelings, right? So each day we're going to build on what you learned the day before and one more thing. So how do I move beyond my fear of failure? If I want to try a new goal, if I do want to get a job and I don't get it and they don't hire me, what do? I feel like awful. Or I put out something, on Facebook and nobody responds, and I feel like whatever we do to ourselves, we beat ourselves up because we try something juicy and it doesn't work the way we want it to. And then we have all these negative thoughts like, oh, I can't do it. I'm a failure. What's wrong with me? Listen to those negative thoughts. See, now you're going to learn how to do that Tuesday so that you can move beyond your fear of failure on Wednesday. Wednesday, we're going to do our Facebook Live at 7:30 p.m. with one of my coaches, and we will be on live for an hour. This will all be recorded on the page, so you can go back and watch it if you can't see it live. All right. Thursday, we're going to talk about how do I move beyond my unrealistic expectations. So how many of you expect life to be fair? How many of you sometimes expect life to be easy? How come this is happening to me? It shouldn't be happening, right? Those are those negative thoughts about life, how it should be. I can't believe my husband's not being honest. He's not being faithful. What? As I'm not being unreasonable to, of course not. But life isn't working out the way you want it to. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with reality? Because reality can be harsh. Reality can be tough. And I'm glad we're not living in Ukraine right now. But sometimes in our own house, it feels like Ukraine. There's a war going on, and we don't like it. And we get stuck in this isn't the way life should be. But it is. How do we deal with that? So we don't lose our faith and we don't lose ourselves in our anger and despair. And then that Facebook will be at noon Eastern time. And then Friday, how do I move beyond this people-pleasing compulsion? Like I so want everybody to like me all of the time, and I can't stand it when someone's mad at me. Yes, you can. And we're going to teach you how, because you can never be your full self unless you're willing to tolerate someone not liking your full self. Not everybody likes roses. They're beautiful. But if you're supposed to be a rose and someone doesn't like roses, are you going to try to be a tulip because they don't like roses? Are you going to try to be an ice cream cone because they don't like roses? No, I hope not. I hope you become your best self. And if someone doesn't like that, good to know. Good to know, because you don't want to marry someone like that, right? You don't want to be best friends with someone who doesn't like who you are. But your job isn't to bend into who they want you to be or who they tell you to be or who they think you should be. Your job is to grow into who God made you to be. And so how do we move beyond that people-pleasing fear and that compulsion inside to be what everybody wants us to be? Friday, our Facebook will be at noon. So I just want to clear all that up. If you have signed up and you haven't gotten information yet about the Facebook page, or you haven't gotten a confirmation that you signed up, please contact our office at assistant@leslievernick.com. Assistant, and say, hey, I signed up for the challenge and I haven't heard anything. I'm not on the Facebook page yet. All right, so just follow up with that. Don't PM me because I don't know what to do. I'm not in charge of that part. I'm in charge of doing this part. So please email my assistant at assistant@leslievernick.com, and they will help you if you have signed up and you haven't gotten any information about it yet. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, well, there was a question I saw in the feed. What time is Pacific time? I will tell you, Pacific time is 3 hours earlier than Eastern time. All right. So that's one way that you can do the math to figure out what is best for you, or what the time is going to be in your time zone wherever you live. So I wanted to answer that. What's that?
We have people from all over the world watching. So just look at Eastern time, look at the Eastern time, and then say, hey, it's 12 o'clock Eastern time. What time is it in London? Or what time is it in Australia? Or what time is it in California? Or what time is it in Colorado? You can do that and they'll tell you.
Exactly. Yeah, you can Google, use your assistant right here.
Siri, what time is it?
Yeah, to know what time it is.
Yeah.
All right, here's another question, Leslie. What if your love language is him doing things that you ask? When he always refuses, but drops everything for a friend when asked, that really hurts me. Ouch, yeah. If your love language is acts of service and he doesn't follow through with that, that is a big sting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question is what?
I guess there's not a question with that.
It's true. It hurts when people don't show us love the way we want them to show us love, and they show other people love in the way that we would like them to show us love. But this is telling you something, and it's telling you something it's hard to look at, right? So what does that mean to you? And I would be careful about not making up a story, but you might be saying something to yourself like, well, this means he doesn't love me, or he doesn't love me like he loves his friend, or he doesn't love me like I want him to. Now, if you're brave enough, you could ask him, you could say, hey, I notice that whenever Tom asks you to come over and help him in his garage, or whenever he asks you to do this, you're more than happy to do it. But when I ask you to do something, it doesn't get done. I'm telling myself a story, according to Brene Brown, she would say it this way. I'm telling myself a story that means you don't love me. And see what he says. And he may say something like, well, it's not that I don't love you, but it's easy for me to do things for Tom because it's kind of guy stuff, and I don't mind fixing stuff around the house. But when you ask me to have a conversation with you deep, I don't know how to do that. And so it's easy for me to avoid that. It might be that kind of stuff. I don't know. So you'd have to kind of check it out. But I certainly understand how you're feeling, but pay attention to what you're thinking and how you're interpreting that behavior. Right. So I remember a woman at church once said to me, I'm getting a divorce from my husband. And I said, oh, really? I knew them. This was, long, long time ago. I was teaching Sunday school and they were in my Sunday school class. And she said, I'm getting divorced. I said, why? And she goes, he's too nice. And I said, oh, really? Tell me more. She goes, oh, he just tries to be nice to show me up. He's trying to make me feel bad about myself because I'm cranky and he's nice. And he's too nice. I'm like, okay. So she's telling herself a story about him being nice, that he's just trying to make her feel bad because she's not as nice as he is. And it was just a weird, convoluted way that she interpreted his mannerism to make her feel bad when in fact she really didn't want to change. And so be careful that you don't tell yourself a story like that without at least inviting him to weigh in on that.
Oh, I so appreciate that, Leslie. We can invite with curious questions. We can invite conversation, and you very well might turn a light bulb on for him. You might not, but he might not even see that he's doing that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have blind spots that we can't even see. And so by us having the courage to speak up and to plan a conversation in a very curious and non-judgmental way, it can invite in something new, perhaps.
Yeah, let me give you an illustration. So, and we'll do this on Tuesday when we talk about negative thoughts. But let's say your husband's late. He's late. That's the facts. Okay. So he's late. Well, how are you feeling? Well, it depends. It depends on the story you're telling yourself inside. Right? So he's late. He's an hour late. He's 2 hours late. So are you telling yourself a story like, oh my gosh, he must have gotten in a terrible car accident. I wonder if he's dead on the side of the road. So if you're telling yourself that story, you're going to feel afraid. If you're telling yourself a story of he doesn't care, he's just working late, he's just at the bar with his friends, he's just, he doesn't care at all about me, he's being so inconsiderate. If that's the story you're telling yourself, you're going to be angry, right? If you're telling yourself a story like, I wonder if he's having an affair, I wonder if he's staying after work and sleeping with his secretary, then you're going to feel anxious, right? So how you read what his behavior is doing, he's late, how you interpret that is going to create a bunch of emotions for you. And how you interpret it may be right, and then again, it might not be. How many of you have, been a wreck because you thought your husband's sitting on the side of the road with, car accident, and he comes home and he says, oh, I was talking late and I got, sidetracked, and it had nothing to do with that, but you were a wreck because of the story you were telling yourself, right? So be aware that we do tell ourselves stories. We're story makers. That's what we do to make sense of the situation. But it may not always be true. So it's a good thing to kind of check it out.
So good. So good. All right, here's another question. If you do look after yourself and are independent financially, but the other part is not doing their part, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I assume you're talking about the other part, meaning the spouse. And I think those are the things that you have to kind of talk about. Say, hey, I'm not comfortable with carrying the full load financially, unless they're carrying a load a different way. So if a husband said to his wife, hey, I'm not comfortable carrying the whole load financially, and maybe she's carrying the house load and the kids load, right? And she might say, well, I've got 6 kids, we're homeschooling them, I've got laundry and house and all that to do. What part of that load do you want to take over? If I work part-time, then that might be a healthy conversation, right? So I don't know what load he's carrying, but if he's functioning like a teenager, and you're functioning as the adult, obviously that's not working for you, although it might be working just fine for him. And so this is where you need to be able to be honest and say, I'm not comfortable carrying the whole load financially, and I'm not sure why you're not taking some ownership here for contributing to the needs of our family financially. What's going on? And he might have his own insecure issues or fear issues or so be careful that you're not just creating a story in your head that he's just lazy and doesn't care. It might be other reasons, but I think it's time for an adult conversation about it.
Right. It's not to be afraid to have the conversations that matter most. And we're going to be talking some about that too, because as we let go of overwhelm and negative thinking, it just might open you up to the creativity that you've been looking for to have those kind of curious conversations.
Yeah. And I love that you're using that word curious conversations, because a lot of times what we have is we have judgmental and condemning conversations. Like, why are you so lazy? Why won't you work? What's wrong with you? And we do them back and forth to each other with our kids. We do that all the time. We're kind of, our whole culture is about accuse and attack versus just like, why are you a Democrat? Why are you a Republican? Why are you pro-Trump? Why are you, whatever. And we're just, kind of coming at it as if you're bad for the way that you think. And so when we do it that way, obviously you're going to get a defensive reaction or a shutdown reaction, one of the two, which doesn't yield any fruit of conversation that's meaningful or healthy. And so if we can kind of do our own work with our own negativity first and have a curious conversation. So if I were having a conversation with someone who was politically completely on the other side of the fence than I was, I might say, help me to understand more about your ideas on abortion and why you think it's a good idea, or why you're so against Roe v. Wade, shifting to the states. I might say, just curious questions. Help me to understand more of your point of view. Tell me how you came to this point of view. Help me to understand who you are in terms of all this. What are your most important values here? And I might be totally on the other side of the fence, but if I can come at it with curiosity and openness versus condemnation and judgment, I'm more likely to have and maintain a relationship with this person, not necessarily as a best friend, but someone who I can dialogue with and maybe have impact on someday, or maybe they can have some impact on me on areas that I'm ignorant in, that I haven't thought much about. I, have really appreciated some conversations I've had with my son-in-law, who's African-American, and my daughter, who's Korean, who we adopted, just racial things that I just have never experienced, but they have, right? And having those curious conversations about what it's like to be in their skin and what's it like to live their life is different than what I've experienced. I think it's really helpful and a way to build relationships instead of separate people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so great, Leslie. So here, this is almost a second part to that question in a way. It's a new question, but it really goes along with this. So then what do you do if they stonewall you when you try to have those important conversations? What do you do then?
So two things. One is accept that they aren't able or ready to have a conversation. And the second would be to, again, ask a curious question. To say, I've noticed that whenever we talk about deeper subjects, when we're not just talking about the news or the kids or who's picking the kids up from soccer, or, who's paying the taxes this year, whatever details you have to do to manage a family, I notice that when we have more heartfelt conversations or more, conversations about our values or what we really think or what we really want, it's hard for you. What's that about? And see if they can say, I feel attacked, or I feel not listened to, or I feel scared to tell you what I really think. Who knows what it might be? You don't know, but you can observe the behavior and comment on that if you can. And they may ignore you, they may not talk, and that tells you something. It tells you that they're not at a place where you can have that kind of relationship, right? What does that mean to you is what you have to figure out.
Mm-hmm. And a caveat to that is, if you are going to have a curious conversations with someone and that conversation might be a little bit hard, please pray yourself up and prepare for it a bit. Mm-hmm. Be ready for an answer that might surprise you. All right. So just pray yourself up. And sometimes what you hear, it could be really hard to hear.
Yeah. Right.
But that's part of taking responsibility, letting go of the nice girl, speaking truth, and learning to stop making the assumptions, the stories in our head, so you can get the facts.
Mm-hmm. And it might be that they say things that are triggering to you or upsetting to you or make you feel very defensive yourself. That certainly happened to me in curious conversations where someone will say, well, I don't like this about you, and I don't like when you do this. And it's very easy to get like, how dare you talk to me? It's very easy to go there. So this takes some work on your part not to be reactive, just like you don't want them to be reactive in terms of you, and to have a healthy conversation with someone. You do that as long as you can in the space that you can do it. So I'm going to close with this illustration. And Lorraine, I do want to tell you that passage that I was talking about where Jesus went to bed and took care of himself, and with Peter's mother-in-law, is in Mark chapter 1 or chapter 2. I can't remember. It's either in chapter 1 or 2 of Mark. Okay. So I think that this is really important, but if you were in a conversation with someone and you felt like you were going to vomit or maybe come out the other way. You had to go to the bathroom. And you were in a conversation and you felt that in your body. You wouldn't just do it. You wouldn't just vomit on yourself, right? You would take care of yourself. You would say, excuse me, I can't have this conversation anymore. Whether you would say it that way or not, you'd say, oh, I'm not feeling good. I got to go to the bathroom. Right? That's what you would say. And so when we're in a conversation with someone and we know that we're getting triggered or we're getting upset or we're getting hot under the collar and we're about to say something that we probably would regret saying, it's probably a good idea to take care of ourselves in that moment of saying, time out, I just can't continue this conversation right now. I can't do this way. And maybe the best thing that you can say to that person is, I got to go to the bathroom, right? That may be the best thing to say so that they're not shaming you for ending the conversation like, oh, you never want to talk about anything, right? But just to say, you know what, I'm sorry, but I got to go to the bathroom right now. And you just got to go to the bathroom because internally you're about to vomit all over them some ugliness that you don't want to do that, right? So there's a high price of being too nice, and there's also a high price of being out of control.
That's right.
Right? And we don't want to shame ourselves by vomiting all over ourselves or pooping all over ourselves in public. So we would go to the bathroom if we felt that. The same way, ladies, the same way, if emotionally you're about to lose your cookies and spew some ugly things all over your children or all over your spouse or all over your mother because she's getting on your nerves, take care of you so that you don't do that.
You're worth taking care of.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, take care of you. Your body is telling you, can't have this conversation anymore. Just like your body would be telling you if you were about to vomit, can't have this conversation anymore. I got to go take care of me. And that's part of stewardship, of recognizing my body's telling me, just like as a 2-year-old, they don't recognize that they got to go to the bathroom. They just poop in their pants. You don't want to do that emotionally anymore, right? So you've got to recognize I'm losing control. I'm going to lose control if I don't go take care of me. And that's a good thing that adults do for themselves. Unfortunately, in our culture, we see a lot of people who don't know how to do that. So people are shooting each other and people are acting out and people are violent and saying horrible things, both professional people and regular people. And we see what's happening in our culture. It's scary and it's unhealthy. And that's not what God calls us to do. Part of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And so we want to be self-controlled and not feel compelled to say yes when we don't want to say yes, and not feel compelled to vomit nastiness just because we feel those feelings. We all feel them sometimes, but we want to learn how to deal with them in different ways. All right.
All right.
Any other comments before we go? Any other questions, Leanne?
Well, I don't see any other questions. I think that we got them all. And unless there's some in the feed that you saw. I don't see any more from Kim.
Yeah, I don't see anywhere. So we would love to invite you to be part of this challenge. If you find these Facebooks helpful, you'll find it even more in the Moving Beyond, because we're going to get really specific on we want you. One of my goals for women is to help you to grow into the person that God calls you to be. I just noticed a comment on the feed that, hey, maybe I've not ever thought about who I'm supposed to be. I've been so much bending into what everybody else wants me to be. And I think this is really an important insight for some of you, that we are always in the growth process. God's calling you. It is God's will for you to mature. It is God's will for you to mature. It is God's will for the seed to become what it was supposed to be. It's not supposed to stay the seed. I have 3 packets of seeds in my drawer, and I was looking at them today because I was deciding whether I was going to throw them out because they've expired, but I've used them in different Facebooks, and I have a packet of sunflower seeds, I have a packet of zinnia seeds, and I have a packet of cucumber seeds. All right. Now a zinnia is not going to become a sunflower, and a cucumber is not going to become a zinnia. But the seed is supposed to become what it was supposed to become. But if it just stays a seed, those seeds in the packet are not the final version of itself. Right? The caterpillar is not the final version of itself. It's to mature into the butterfly. And it goes through a lot of trauma to go in that cocoon and fight its way out, right? And you're to be who God designed you to be, and you're in this growth process. And so if you find yourself stuck in this growth process because you're married in an unhappy marriage, or you've had some trauma in your life, or all those kind of things, please don't tell yourself that you can't do it. You're still supposed to grow. And even in those horrible situations. God's going to use them to build certain muscles. A caterpillar, when it's in that cocoon, has to actually beat its wings against the walls of that cocoon in order to strengthen the wings so it can fly. And if you are too nice to a caterpillar hanging in the cocoon, and you cut that cocoon so the butterfly doesn't have to flap its wings to get out, you've actually killed the butterfly, because the butterfly only can fly after it's beat its wings against the edges of the cocoon. And so sometimes when we're struggling and we think, God, why are you allowing me to struggle so hard? This is so uncomfortable. It's to build muscles for the next step, for the next part of your journey, so that you can fly, so that you are becoming what God called you to become. But so many of us live for the other person's voice in our head of who we're supposed to be, instead of God's voice. And so you've stifled your growth. You've stunted your growth. Your husband has stunted your growth. Your mother has stunted your growth. Your own negative voices have stunted your growth. And I'm here to tell you that that is not God's best for you. It's hurting you. And we want you to be free, to become all that God's called you to be. And are some people not going to like that? Probably, because some people didn't like who Jesus was either, right? And he was perfect. So you're not going to get 100% approval rating on that. Some people don't like butterflies. Some people don't like roses. Some people don't like zinnias or sunflowers or cucumbers, but you're supposed to be who God called you to be. Don't sell yourself short on that.
Amen. Amen to that.
So sign up for the challenge. And I think we're doing another one of these Facebook Lives, I think Friday. Let me look and see what the topic is. All right. We're going to talk about ways that you can say no. Ways that you can say no, ways that you can buy time so that you don't feel pressured into saying yes before you're ready. So we're going to talk some more about that on Friday, and I think it's going to be at noon Eastern time. Okay. So we'll give you about 10 different ways that you can say no. So please show up, and maybe we'll create a little PDF that we can give you those 10 ways so that you can download them in an easy way. All right. So we'll see you then. I'm not sure who's going to be with me, or if it's going to be me or someone else. I'm not sure. I just got home and I'm moving. So I'm moving to Prescott tomorrow. And so I'll be in a different location on Friday. I hope I'll be here with you, and we'll talk about that. Is there anything else you want to say, Leanne?
Well, just as, in summary, being too nice will cost you. It could cost you your health, your reputation, your safety, and even your sanity. And I'll bet you that's not a price that you want to pay. You showed up here, and we look forward to hearing from you in the feed. I would love to know, as I go back and read the feed, what's your nugget from today? What did you take away that you really want to put in your toolbox? I had to think for a minute how I want to say that you really want to put into your toolbox to let go of the nice girl and embrace the loving, kind woman that God created you to be. The honest, real, and not worry about getting it right all the time.
Yeah.
We talked the last couple of days about being a chameleon, and you made reference to that, not using that word. That was a word that I used when I did a live here yesterday and the day before, but that don't let somebody else turn you into something that you're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I use the different illustrations of a seed, and I'm going to use close in this. I've worked with women for 40 years now, and I've done everything the same as you. I've been too dependent. I've been unhealthy. I've been an overfunctioner, enabler, all of those things. So I've learned spiritually as well as personally how to take this journey of growth. And I'm still on the journey. I'm still learning to grow. That's why I'm so upset. I lost my journal yesterday with all this juicy stuff that God had given me for growth. And I'm saying, God, are you going to give this to me? Because I don't know if I'll remember everything. And he assured me that if it was important for me to remember, he would put it on my mind again. But, we use the illustration of a seed. A seed is, if an acorn becomes an oak tree, it doesn't stay an acorn. A seed becomes what it's supposed to become. But another way of seeing this is this, and I'll just close with this. This is how I see women today, oftentimes. And it's not all women, but it's a lot of women. If you go to 31 Flavors, ice cream, if you're in the ice cream store, put in the chat, what flavor do you usually pick? If you're getting an ice cream cone at an ice cream store, what flavor would you usually pick? Put it in the chat. Okay, real quick. Your favorite flavor. What would you pick if now don't tell me you're not eating ice cream. I'm not eating ice cream either. But if you were eating ice cream and you didn't have to pay any price for that in terms of calories or weight gain, what ice cream would you choose? What flavor? Vanilla, Texas Starry Night, French vanilla, Rocky Road. Okay, so you're picking different ones. Chocolate, strawberry. Yeah. Rocky Road, maple walnut. All right, so this is what you want to pay attention. Lemon sorbet. You pick different flavors. So when someone is looking for a friend or you're looking for a friend, just like in the ice cream store, you usually tend to like certain kinds of flavors. And maybe you don't even pay attention to other kinds of flavors. So I would never pick raspberry fudge swirl, or I would never pick cookie dough, or I would never pick lemon sorbet, not because they're not good. In fact, Leanne, you had a lemon gelato when we were in Israel, and I licked it. It was really good. I wish I would have picked that one, but I didn't. I picked a chocolate one because I always pick a chocolate one of some sort. If I'm going to eat the calories, it's going to have chocolate in it, right? So if you think about that, so let's picture that you are lemon sorbet and you look at everybody picking chocolate in that ice cream store and they're not picking you. Only a couple people pick lemon sorbet. So you say to yourself, what's wrong with me? I don't have very many people picking me. I just have, I only had 5 people pick me today, but there was 25 or 50 people who picked chocolate something. I should be chocolate. And so you try to be chocolate instead of being delicious, marvelous, mouth-watering lemon sorbet. And this is what women do. Oh, this hot guy, he likes chocolate. I better become chocolate instead of being lemon sorbet. And so you try to be what you think they want you to be, so they'll pick you, when in fact, you're not the right person for them if they don't love lemon sorbet, right? So you are to be who God made you to be in the most delicious, wonderful, mouth-watering way. And someone who loves lemon sorbet will just embrace you and pick you every time. And someone who wants chocolate doesn't mean that you're not worth anything. It means they like chocolate. And let them pick chocolate. Don't try to be chocolate. So they pick you. Whether we're talking about men in your life or we're talking about girlfriends, let them pick you because they like you. And you pick other people because you like them, not because you feel like, oh, I've got to pick them. You don't go into an ice cream parlor and think, if I don't pick lemon sorbet, I'm going to hurt their feelings. You just pick the one you like. Pay attention to what you like and what you're attracted to. And be the person who's attracted to those kind of qualities. And don't try to fake it. Because when you aren't authentic and you're not your genuine real self, and you try to be chocolate or you try to be lemon sorbet because you think this person wants you to be, guess what? It's a lose-lose. Because you can't be that. And they end up being disappointed. And you're frustrated because you keep trying so hard to be what they want. And you're not. So be who God calls you to be. That's why it's so important. And so remember that, ladies, that's what we're trying to help you do, is let go of this people-pleasing tendency. Let me be what you want me to be. What do I need to do to get you to like me? And just say, God, who did you make me to be? And let me flourish into that person. That's our goal for you in this challenge and onward. So take that to heart as you do your prayer time this week and just ask God to help you not to bend into people, but to lift up to God and say, you define me, God. You made me. I was the seed in my mother's womb. Who am I to become? That's your job, not to ask your husband that question or your pastor or me. You're to know that with God's work in your life. Any final words, Leanne?
Oh, you said it all beautifully. I just echo.
Okay.
I just echo what you said. It was lovely. There's a lot of beautiful comments in the feed about how helpful this has been, and a lot of people excited for the challenge. And, I'll just say, sign up for the challenge. You'll be so glad that you did. LeslieBurnick.com/challenge. And there's a great video on there that Leslie did that talks about it. So if you're joining in late and you didn't hear the explanation of everything, the link has a great explanation. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that as well.
And if you resonate with any of this, 5 hours of your time next week and $17 is a really pretty inexpensive cost for the growth that you will get. And so I just challenge you to give yourself this gift, of signing up for the challenge, hanging out with us for a week, and seeing what God does in your heart and in your life so that you can become, and any blocks that are in your way of overwhelm or negative thoughts or fear of failure or unrealistic expectations or people pleasing, you now have some tools to move beyond them, and you have some support in this group to do the work that God's called you to do. Stop focusing on him. Stop focusing on her who isn't loving you like you want them to do, and start focusing on you and how am I to grow in this season of my life. And that will pay off in spades for you. All right. We will see you on Friday. All right. Thanks so much, Leanne. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.